Hypocrisy.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law-Splaining the Interwebs. I am your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, small law firm in central Minnesota. How you guys doing tonight? I hope you're doing very well. I hope you're doing very, very well. We've got a show today, kind of a smorgasbord. Is that a Jewish word? Where's that word from? I feel like the Jews, we've got a smorgasbord of topics tonight. Kind of a throw everything at it approach. There are some bigger topics that I want to get into, but I mentioned my son is going on a mission trip, and like today was a lot of time getting him ready, making sure he had everything he needed to go, and generally spending a little bit more time with him. And tomorrow is very similar. We have a lot of family stuff, but next week I do plan on jumping in. Well, let me say it this way. Over the weekend, I plan on pursuing some of these topics, seeing if they're worth like delving into on the show and really getting into one. Again, I mentioned one that someone sent to me the other day. It's a pro se defendant in Wisconsin who's accused of I shouldn't laugh at this. I'm not laughing at what the accusation for the crime is, because the crime is terrible. It's a sexual assault of someone, but his defense involves some pretty interesting questions about like the differences between an anus and a vagina and stuff like that. So, I mean, kind of a wild case. I don't know how long the trial's supposed to go and stuff like that, but I gotta look into it and see. But I am looking to see if that's worth like digging into some of the questioning on the night show, because, you know, sometimes pro se defendants are funny. Sometimes they ask unorthodox questions. But anyway, so there's some of those that I want to dig into, but I want to make sure they're worth it before I do. And like I said, these couple days before my kid leaves is, you know, I want to get some time in. It's a little nerve-wracking, you know, when your oldest spawn is like going to go somewhere without you for a while. It's weird, you know? So, anyway, so that's that. But tonight we've got a bunch of topics, starting with, you know, this White House cocaine thing is kind of funny. And I think a large amount of people have a rough estimation of where the cocaine came from. And it mainly is to do with their inability to seem to find where it came from, which is sus, to say the least. So that being said, we'll talk about that a little bit, and then what kind of the fallout of it is. What the follow-up is. There's some threats from Hunter Biden. I don't know why Hunter Biden's lawyers are threatening anybody about this cocaine thing. It's very weird. Very weird to like that he's even mentioned. I'm not sure. Is he even talked about? I mean, they don't know who it is. Like, I'm not sure why Hunter's on, like why his lawyers are talking about it at all. So there's that. I want to do a little bit of discussion, you know, kind of on the legal front about these two Supreme Court decisions that we talked about, but now it's kind of the aftermath. And this is just kind of an interesting way in which Supreme Court decisions are written versus how they're read by popular media usually, and then versus how they're used for other purposes that are intended to either maybe expand the ruling or narrow the ruling or whatever. So the two decisions are, one, that, you know, the diversity in colleges decision, the race-based college admissions process that was struck down. And then, of course, we also have the LGBTQ plus thing. We have a bunch of idiots talking about it. So we'll be kind of exploring those topics a little bit, just again with the framework of, in general, being cautious with Supreme Court decisions and how you interpret them, because people have a tendency to really overinterpret something and say, oh, this means this, usually when they get very politically charged on the topic. But they don't mean that. They mean what they say. And then that might lead to a conclusion that's different. But until something like that happens, it really doesn't. So we'll be talking about that a little bit. What else do we have? Oh, yeah. The government is appealing their loss against Microsoft in the FTC case, which is great, I guess. The FTC seems to be wasting everybody's time and money on the Microsoft thing. It has every indication of going through. They lost the case on the preliminary injunction, which means the deal should happen. They have to, for the preliminary injunction, they have to make the case, given every benefit of the doubt, that they're likely to prevail in their claim. And the judge said, even giving you every benefit, even giving you definitions that probably won't be applied in the actual full case, you still lose. And so this judge really seemed to kind of clamp off the idea that the FTC would go on to prevail in their claim, even though the case theory will go on and could undo the merger after it's done. But that being said, they're appealing that preliminary injunction decision, which a lot of people are pissed off about because it really looks like a waste of time and money. This FTC is very strange in what it's doing. And Linda Khan is the FTC director, and she seems like a complete fucking dolt. So, that case is there. We'll talk about that a little bit. The government is also appealing their own victories in the January 6 trials for some of the bigger defendants who got some of the longest sentences, because they determined that even though they get the longest sentences, they're not enough. And I mean, say what you will about the January 6 people, and I've been very, very critical of January 6 protesters. I think it was a bad moment. Now be careful before you get too pissed off at how I say this. I don't think it achieved the aims that the GOP or the Team Trump or even that the protesters wanted, and it gave people a lot of ammunition. That, of course, is completely divorced from the legality of what was done, how these people were treated, what they were accused of under the law, and what they were accused of and then not charged with under the law. All of that stuff is completely different from just the general opinion of, yeah, this didn't really work so well, versus legal rights and the recognition of what happened, versus things like First Amendment considerations and whether these broad trespassing charges should actually apply, whether there was an official attempt to actually stall a government proceeding in the way that the law that was used is written, stuff like that. These are all questions that are unanswered. But regardless of all that, the federal prosecutors are mad that they're not getting high enough sentences because the judge in some of the cases gave, quote, below guidelines sentences. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, not a ton, but it's just this idea that, like, it was one of the most terrifying moments for politicians. One of the most terrifying possible moments for politicians is when any portion of the citizenry gets fed up with their shit. It is crazy, like how freaked out politicians actually are. Now, the fourth branch of government is commonly referred to as the administrative branch that's created by the legislature. It operates purportedly under the executive branch, but also kind of on its own. But the real fourth branch of government, the actual one, is the people. And that is the democratic process by which we elect representatives in a Republican government. And similarly, the people are who all rights and powers that the government has are derived and borrowed from. And so the people really do have this ability, recognized by the logical progression of this country from a British colony to a people manifested independent republic based on rebellion from tyranny. It really is this fourth silent branch of government that doesn't have much real official power. Like, you can't make a law or whatever. Like, you can't just initiate something as people. You can drive petitions, you can sue, you can, demand redress from the government. You can do all these things, but it's not like a legislative authority or an executive authority or judicial authority as are specifically laid out in the Constitution. But there is this inherent understanding that the people ultimately hold the reins on government, not the other way around. And as I was so eloquently immortalized by Akira the Don, the government should fear the people all the time. And for the first time in a while, we saw our government afraid during January 6th. And that, I think, is propagating the response to this alleged criminal acts that is disproportionate from the response to other criminal acts that happen throughout the country on a daily basis, or even on a semi-regular, even an irregular basis, such as the Summer of Love protests of 2020 that had a lot of resemblance to the January 6th incident. So we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. Michael Knowles said condoms are gay. He's right. Condoms are gay. I agree with that. I don't think I agree with it for the same reasons that Michael Knowles does, but I am on board with someone at Daily Wire for once in my life. Once in my life, I'm there. So we're going to talk about that, the response to Michael Knowles. There, in defense of Michael Knowles, I just want to say there's a tendency to intentionally, now I don't know if this happened. There's an intention, there's a tendency to intentionally misrepresent maybe comedic or hyperbolic effect put on in an entertainment show for the purposes of trying to make someone look ridiculous on an otherwise, interesting point. Part of the nature of infotainment news, I guess, that has existed really since the advent of talk radio and cable television news, cable news networks, is this blending of delivering information to people, but with some sort of comedic, entertaining, and engaging affectation versus just a dry delivery by some guy reading 2-minute sound bites, like a traditional news network. So I don't know. We're going to watch the Michael Knowles segment, see how he delivers his condoms are super gay thing. And he's talking on the point that he believes that the Supreme Court's rulings on the right to access contraceptives should be rolled back. Now, I don't know if I'm fully on board with that argument. It's a tough one. Because it really is an issue of, should government be regulating this at all? And then the second question would be, should state governments be regulating contraceptives? And then the third one is, does the government have the power to not allow states to regulate contraceptives? It's like a multi-phased question that I haven't thought through. I mean, personally, I think people should have access to contraceptives. I don't care. Condoms are gay, though. I'm with that. So we'll talk about that. I don't know. It's just kind of a funny thing. I also have the subject. It's not in the title, but some people are asking if this is about me. No, it's not about me. I have the title of bogus traffic stops in the description, and yeah, it can't be about me. They'd have to be bogus. Mine was, legitimate. It's fine. But no, there's a bogus traffic stop. It's someone sent it to me. I think it's on an Instagram reel, but it seems like it came from the Lackluster YouTube channel. Lackluster's an interesting duck. Because he's overtly anti-cop. Overtly and prominently anti-cop. And it also, I'm anti-government force in general. So I try to I try to balance that bias as much as I can because I know it's there. Lackluster does not seem to do that, and he will often overstate um, a right or an infringement, either one of those. Now, in this video, like I said, it seems to be from his channel because he's speaks for a little, but it's clipped out, so I'm not 100% sure because, like I said, I think it was sent to me on an Instagram or Twitter thing. But I'll say this: he doesn't really offer much of commentary on this segment, so we're gonna kind of look at it for what it is and talk about traffic stops in general. This particular one, what's right, what's wrong. There is some variation in state law, but I think these are some general ideas about it. And I do think that this traffic stop, spoiler alert, is completely fucking bogus. But it's also one of these things that we kind of see happening on these channels where someone is exercising a First Amendment right. The officer doesn't like the First Amendment right and then uses that First Amendment protected speech as a predicate for a stop, and then they try to sell it as something else. All right, so that's funny, I guess. Richard Stockton says, "Did you see Uncivil calling you a bitch on his channel? He kept comparing you to Christian." No, but that sounds funny. Oh my god. So that'll be great. No, is he calling me out? Where you at? Where you at, Uncivil? All right. So we got that. Yesterday's show, if you happen to miss it, was me going through the latest ruling in my lawsuit. Some good things, some bad things. I've had more time to think on it, and I've got some thoughts. I'm not super open to sharing them at this time because they involve potential legal strategy. So probably not going to talk about those before consulting with my attorney on it. I don't know that it ultimately matters. I don't know how long those things would take to manifest anyway, but there's some issues. There's some issues with this ruling. And again, the real question is, do you appeal at this point? And there's a possible benefit to appeal. There's a big downside to appeal. I'm still thinking about it. But anyway, I have a couple more thoughts on it. I may share them sometime soon. I think the judge, in some ways, overlooked a very critical issue, but I really don't want to speak about that issue. Because if the other side hasn't seen it, then frankly, they're retarded. But if they haven't seen that, it's a big problem for them, and that's kind of funny, in my opinion. So we'll see if I talk about it or if we just file on it at some point. But you can go see my initial thoughts on the order in yesterday's show. Might be interesting, might not. No, Richard Stockton. This time it has nothing to do with the judge. It has a lot to do with the other party, though. Okay. What else is there? Tomorrow's going to be, well, probably a couple guests, laid back. We'll get some news stories, talk about some stuff. I don't know who's going to be on the show tomorrow. I assume Camelot will. If Camelot has previously been a turnoff for you, that's cool. Just as a note, though Camelot and I are doing the Friday shows again, and as well as inviting other people, they're not in the same vein as they were prior to my vacation, where they got extremely vulgar and ridiculous. Scaled that back a little bit because it wasn't really the content I wanted to do. It was easy to do, but it really wasn't hitting the way I wanted it to. So give it a shot or don't. It's fine. Up to you. With that, we're going to go ahead and get into this. And I have not done this in a long time. I need to do a whiskey review. I haven't done a whiskey in a while. And it was something I used to do every month, I think. I would do one whiskey review at least. So I was half thinking of doing it tonight, but I'll probably do it on Monday, maybe. But I got a British whiskey. I don't drink a lot of British whiskey. So British whiskey will be the next whiskey review. Might do it tomorrow, might do it Monday. We'll see. So anyway. Now don't get me wrong, like the comedic shows are still comedic and they still go, like a little beyond the scope, but they were repetitive. That was the problem. It was the same conversation every Friday. So that was not what I wanted it to be. It was supposed to be fun and light and jokes, but not the same jokes. Okay, here we go. So with that, I guess let's just jump right into the topics here. What do we got here? Where do we start? Where to begin? Also, I have this story. We're not going to go through it now. There's a guy accused of torturing and killing 6 kittens, which on its face is kind of awful, right? Like, but there's a twist. It's a twist that makes it really strange. And I'm like, Now so the twist for this is that it was the same, it was supposed to be the same kitten. So he's killing these kittens and he's replacing them with look-alike kittens because he has a girlfriend. He doesn't want her to know that and I'm just like, it's a lot of work. Like that's a lot of extra work. Like you have to go find a look-alike cat. Like I think this guy should be stapled to a wall and have his testicles bashed with a sledgehammer. Like, to me, that's an appropriate penalty. But I was just like, why are you I don't get it. That's just a lot of work. I just don't get it. He kind of looks like a guy I know, but he has a face where I think he looks like a guy everybody knows. So I might pull him up later in the show. But I don't want to focus on it because that's really depressing, right? Like, oh my God, what the fuck is wrong with you? Here we go. All right, so we're going to start with this White House cocaine story, I guess. You guys know about this, I assume, at least a little bit. So long story short, there was a bag of cocaine just found at the White House on the ground or whatever. And they're like, how would we know what would happen at the White House? Like, how would we even understand what what's going on at the White House? Has anyone even been in there? I don't know. So the Secret Service has concluded its investigation into the small bag of cocaine, very important small bag of cocaine found at the White House. Now, this is the only evidence that this is not actually Hunter's cocaine, right? Like that it's a small bag is the only thing that we can for sure say, like, well, this kind of goes against the idea that this might be Hunter's. At the White House has been unable to identify a subject. So the Secret Service, in all of their aptitude, has been unable to identify a suspect. There's not like trillions of hours of video. Every corner of the White House is not covered constantly. They have no idea. So, according to a statement from the U.S. Secret Service officials combed through security systems and indexed several hundreds individuals who entered the West Wing in the days preceding the discovery and were unable to identify a suspect, according to the USSS statement. That's the U.S. Secret Service. The Secret Service said FBI lab results from the packaging found insufficient DNA and could not retrieve any fingerprints. Therefore, the Secret Service is not able to compare evidence against the known pool of individuals, a statement from the USSS said. Investigators were also unable to identify the particular moment or day when the baggie was left inside the West Wing cubby near the lower level entrance where it was discovered. There was no surveillance video footage found that provided investigative leads or any other means for investigators to identify who may have deposited the found substance in the area. The agency's statement said, without physical evidence, the investigation will not be able to single out a person of interest. From the hundreds of individuals who passed through the vestibule where the cocaine was discovered, at this time, the Secret Service's investigation is closed due to lack of physical evidence. Now, does anybody believe this? Honestly. Now, okay, jokes about Hunter Biden aside, does anybody believe this? That the Secret Service, in a non-bedroom room of the White House, doesn't have a camera on a set of cubbies where something could be placed? I mean, are we fucking kidding me? What? You got to have a camera. Like, there's got to be one. I can't imagine there is not a camera on a set of any area where a cubby would be. Like, you could slip like a bomb or a malicious powder like anthrax in there, you'd suppose. The cubby also had a guard there to secure the lockers, right? How can we know who came by? So yeah, I don't know. It's just funny because it's like, I mean, the January 6th shit, they're like identifying people in this massive campaign, like by grainy face pictures and then linking them up with weird, like corresponding stuff. Like, the amount of effort that went into this is huge. And the amount of effort that's gone into finding this thing is nothing. Another Hunter was there like a couple days before too, so who knows? The other thing is, like, Hunter would never lose a bag. But then you think about how many times the Bidens and Hunter have lost important things or left them behind somewhere and just were like, yeah, fuck it. I'll get it in 6 months, and then never do. So I don't know. But okay, so that's great. A source familiar with the investigation told CNN that the leading theory remains that it was left by one of the hundreds of visitors who entered the West Wing that weekend for tours who were asked to leave their phones inside the cubbies. Oh, you know what? They're right. I gotta leave my phone in there. I better drop my bag of Coke in the cubby too. Why? Like, presumably you already got it in. Okay. And no one else used that cubby? Like, no one else used it? That one was just there for days? The cubbies were where the small bag of cocaine was found is a blind spot for surveillance cameras, according to a source familiar with the investigation. Thanks for telling us. While there's surveillance around where the bag was found, cameras are not trained directly on the West Wing cubbies near the lower level entrance where it was discovered, the source said, making it difficult to identify who left the bag behind. We've been briefed by Secret Service on the outcome of their investigation and are reviewing the information, White House Principal Deputy Press Secretary Olivia Dalton said in a statement. I mean, this seems like an oversight. CNN previously reported that cocaine was found in a cubby near the ground floor entrance to the West Wing, where staff-led tours of the White House passed through on their way into the building. Visitors entering the West Wing for tours are asked to leave their phones in the cubbies, which can also be used by staff who cannot bring their phones into a SCIF or sensitive compartmented information facility where classified materials are handled. Wait, isn't that just like the Biden's bathroom and the summer house? And the cubbies are located near the Situation Room, which has not been used for months due to ongoing renovations. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre expressed confidence last week that Secret Service will get to the bottom of the incident. Well, I guess if you state it confidently, it's not always correct. We've learned that now. The discovery of a powdery substance by Secret Service personnel conducting routine rounds of the building had prompted a brief evacuation as part of what the Secret Service described as precautionary closures. The Secret Service briefed the House Oversight and Accountability Committee on the case Thursday morning. Leaving that briefing, GOP rep Tim Burchett told CNN the case was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my entire life. He said that the bag contained less than a gram of cocaine. Y'all have all been to the White House. You give your social security number. You get, I'm sure they have facial identification and everything else. And to say they don't know who it is, to me, somebody should lose their job over this. A lot of people, he said. He added, somebody walks in the White House, the most secure building in the U.S. in the world, actually, and can place something in a locker. What if it was a biological entity? What if it was something that had an emergent that would mature over a few days and it could, it's just a lot of questions. GOP Rep Marjorie Taylor Greene told reporters that the Secret Service informed members in their briefing that it had narrowed its list of suspects down to 500 people. We've narrowed it down to a high school class. Greene, who said part of the briefing was classified, said she asked Secret Service if they would drug test those individuals, and she said their answer was no. And that honestly is a problem. You can't just blanket drug test 500 people. To conduct a seizure of a sample of DNA from someone, you have to have probable cause. Like, you can't just go, well, you're on a list of 1 of 500. We're going to go ahead and narrow this down. You could ask them for a voluntary submission. Obviously, the people who have taken cocaine recently would probably not, go ahead and do that. But either way, you can't just blanket go, well, 500 people, we're just going to do the poke. You can't do that. Again, that would be a search and seizure, and it would be subject to Fourth Amendment concerns. Your mom's company found drugs and tested 2,000 employees. Yeah, but unless your mom's company is the government, it's a different analysis. The list includes a mixture of staffers and others on a tour, according to GOP Rep Lauren Boebert, but the Secret Service would not provide specifics. Boebert said the cocaine was found in locker number 50, and the key to that locker is missing. A number of members raised issues with the locker system and how it needs to be more secure. They just have no idea. There's no way to know. You know what they do? They just go ahead and give out these keys at the White House, and they don't keep track of who takes them or anything like that. It's just, it's just a key to a compartment right outside one of the most secure locations in the entire country, where a biological agent could destabilize the entire world. Like, honestly. And he's got the key. Somebody out there has the key to this cubby. Like, they just have it. And the White House has no idea. It's baffling to me. That's baffling to me. I can't imagine that. I feel like amusement parks know who has what key. A Secret Service spokesman said, wait. Republican Rep Nancy Mace said the Secret Service had to get visitor logs and other information from the Biden administration through the Presidential Records Act because the locker where the cocaine was found is under the jurisdiction of the Biden administration. No. The Secret Service spokesman said Thursday that small amounts of marijuana were twice found at the White House last year. No arrests were made in those cases either. No one was arrested in these incidents because the weight of the marijuana confiscated did not meet the legal threshold for federal charges or D.C. misdemeanor criminal charges, as the District of Columbia's decriminalized possession. Secret Service spokesman Stephen Kopik said in a statement, the marijuana was collected by officers and destroyed. I wonder how it was destroyed. I wonder. Yeah, we burned it. It wasn't a lot, but trust me, we got rid of it. Okay, all right. So this is the White House cocaine, but it led me also to this. Here we go. This is funny to me. So the Hunter Biden lawyers tell Trump to end attacks, warning they're one social message away from causing violence. So this is, this is an interesting notion. It's an interesting notion about the nature of online communications, online speech, the advent of social media, the responsibility of, I guess, social media creators and influencers, and the limits of free speech. right? Because there's a question out there of how much responsibility a speaker bears for the acts of someone who heard the speech. And I'm not talking about incitement in the way that it's understood by US law. So incitement requires an imminent possibility of action from the speaker and a reasonable understanding that the speech would be linked to that action. All right. It has to be possible. And this is under, it's an Ohio case. Fuck. What's the name? I don't remember, but it was a 1958 neo-Nazi Klan rally that happened in Ohio. I'm going to think of it in a little bit. But the long and short was you have a neo-Nazi group and you have a Klan group in 1958. Brandenburg. Damn it. Brandenburg versus Ohio. You have a neo-Nazi and a Klan meeting happening in public and the case goes to the Supreme Court in 1958 for resolution. And Brandenburg himself was cited for incitement of violence. But then the Supreme Court analysis basically said, but there weren't any black people around for him to incite the mob too. Like, he spoke generally in very awful ways about what to do to black people, including like lynchings and beatings and threats and all that stuff. Used a lot of colorful racial slurs that are in rap songs. You can find them there if you need help identifying them. They did all this, and they said, yeah, there's not really a thing like hate speech, and you can't just charge someone with incitement if there's no imminent act that can be caused. But now people want to go ahead and 68, sorry, not 58. Thank you, Sean. Now there are people who want to go ahead and try to expand the responsibility of a speaker based on social media with the idea that the speaker can be responsible if some person takes their words and decides to act in a way, even if the speaker didn't request it. And the concept is that people are so influential and they should know about their crazy viewers or something that even though they're not directly asking for it, they kind of are, though. Like, they kind of are. If they're like, man, fuck the police. And someone's like, yeah, exactly. And goes and rapes a police officer. It's like, well, you should have known. You said, fuck the police. And then now that someone was going to do it. They're like, I didn't know there was a weird, crazy guy out there who's going to go rape a cop. That's strange. It's not even what I meant. And they're like, so, bro, it's your follower. How do you know? Well, they saw it. How do you, like, you have no idea, right? But this is the new thing. And of course, Trump is the target here. And this is terrifying. This should be terrifying for anybody because any act can be assigned to match something you say if someone targets it. And someone can always claim to follow you or whatever, whether they do or not, or whether they follow you and hate you and act out in some response. Somehow this can be linked to your speech. But again, incitement is very specific. Like, a reasonable person standard exists in incitement because crazy people will always be crazy. And you can't account for crazy. You're not crazy. Well, a few of you aren't crazy. So few of you can't account for how crazy other people are. And so your reasonable words cannot be misconstrued and then applied back to you in some sort of criminal liability. Criminal law almost always entails some sort of intent. Even the strict liability aspect of criminal law, like possession of child pornography, possession of drugs, or whatever, tends to still satisfy the intent threshold because you intended to possess the thing. Now, you may not have intended to possess an illegal thing, but if you intended to possess the thing that is illegal, then you are guilty of it. Unless you got a real good defense, like it really looked like baking soda, though. I thought that's what I asked for, and they gave me the wrong container. Something like that. And even that, they're going to be like, yeah, sure. All right, cool. Yeah. Mr. Biden, please stop. Anyway, so this type of threat of civil action and then criminal action, any government action over speech that doesn't contain a desire to convey a threat, a desire to incite someone, that doesn't convey the elements that we traditionally associate with these quote unquote speech infractions. This is scary in the world of social media now, where your message can be seen by anybody, whether you know the audience or not. Like, at least in Brandenburg, guys, like, well, look, I know I'm going to be around a bunch of neo-Nazis and KKK guys. I know who to talk to here. Like, I know who I'm talking to. On Twitter, on YouTube, on Rumble, Kick, wherever you are, you don't know who's watching. You don't know who will see a clip that gets shared. You don't know anything about it. And the idea that you could be held responsible for something that you didn't intend is kind of scary. So we've got Hunter Biden lawyers tell Trump to end attacks, warning they're one social message away from causing violence, which I doubt that. I'm pretty sure that Trump has quite a few more social messages coming up, and none of them will prompt violence against Hunter Biden. But here we go. Oh, shit. Digital cocaine says, is there a way to purchase a shotgun legally hunting if you have a felony? Charge 75 section 3732. To my knowledge, if you have an existing felony, no, you are prohibited from purchasing a shotgun or anything defined as a firearm. So probably not. Probably not. Lawyers for the president's son, Hunter Biden, sent Donald Trump a cease and desist letter on Thursday, alleging that the former president's frequent hostile comments about Mr. Biden are defamatory and likely to inspire violence. We are just one such social media message away from another incident, the letter obtained by Law 360 claims, citing the violent attack on former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband as a cautionary tale of the dangers of online rhetoric. You should make it clear to Mr. Trump, if you have not done so already, that Mr. Trump's words have caused harm in the past and threaten to do so again if he does not stop, the letter adds. The letter points to recent examples of Mr. Trump's aggressive statements about Mr. Biden, such as a March social media post allegedly implying Mr. Biden should get a death sentence, and July message claiming cocaine found in the White House was for use by Hunter. The letter claims such provocations could inspire one of Mr. Trump's easy-to-trigger followers. Donald Trump's lawyer, Joe Tapioca, declined to comment when contacted by The Independent. In June, Mr. Biden reached a tentative agreement with federal prosecutors to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor counts of failing to pay taxes and admit the facts of a gun charge in exchange for likely avoiding jail time. And again, I think I said somewhere, unpopular opinion. The law under which Hunter Biden is charged for the gun, basically lying on his permit to, or his application to purchase a firearm about drug use. I think that law is unconstitutional. I think it definitely is unconstitutional under Bruin, and I think it was already unconstitutional. It violates your Fifth Amendment right to be free from incrimination, self-incrimination for the purposes of exercising your Second Amendment right. And I do not think that is a proper question. I don't think it ever should have been. And I actually think the law denying Second Amendment rights to someone who is a user of an illegal substance, merely a user, not currently using an illegal substance, is similarly unconstitutional. And we've seen indications in a couple of circuit courts that they agree there. The Fifth Circuit Court being the first one to sort of make the ruling that might not be a constitutional question and may not be a constitutional law or restriction on firearm ownership. Because while we have a history in the United States of preventing people who are currently intoxicated or otherwise incapacitated from using a firearm, the possession of a firearm by someone who has a history or a vague notion or an addiction to a substance, so long as they're not utilizing the firearm while under the effects of the substance, does not seem to be constitutionally permitted and doesn't seem to be historically supported. So, in my personal opinion, not that I have any desire to defend Hunter Biden, the entire thing is based on an unconstitutional law, and I think it's garbage. Again, the Second Amendment doesn't say shall not be infringed unless the person's a user of a controlled substance. I actually think that a former felon should not be barred from having a firearm unless they can specifically link the crime to improper use of a firearm. Now, maybe while they're on, their post-incarceration parole, probation, still being monitored, that can be a condition of probation. Sure, maybe that's the idea. But once someone has served their time, is no longer incarcerated, is no longer under monitor of the U.S. government, I do not see how merely having a felony is a sufficient ground for a permanent suspension from gun ownership. I don't see it. And if they want to change that, amend the fucking Constitution. Just amend the fucking Constitution. There's a whole goddamn process. And if it's so fucking popular, put your balls on the damn table and amend it. But you can't. You can't do it because you know you're going to fucking lose. And it pisses me off. It pisses me off a lot. Someone said some states don't even let them vote. I'm going to say this too. The right to vote is not enshrined in the Constitution the way the right to ownership and to keeping and bearing arms is. Not even close. In fact, there is no enumerated right to vote. There's merely a freedom from denial of a right to vote should one exist based on race and based on gender. That's it. You don't actually have a constitutional right to vote. The states decide how they will choose. The states control their own elections. So you don't have a right to vote. You do have a right to keep and bear arms, all of them. And so it really pisses me off when like the founders are like, you know what, we better write this down. And while they wrote it down and voted on it, they didn't go, you know what, right to vote. They didn't say that. That wasn't in there. This is crazy. It's crazy to think about just how infringed the Second Amendment is and how lesser rights that are not enumerated, that are not specifically laid out in the Constitution, are often vaulted far above them in the chain of importance. The Second Amendment, to quote Clarence Thomas, is the stepchild of the Constitution. And it is ignored, it is misunderstood, and despite his current efforts, I think it will remain so for a while. Okay, a couple chats have come in. Digital Cocaine says, word, I'll go get one in the hood. That's what happens when you try to do it right. Legal advice is to not do that. There you go. FYI. Good point. I still think felons should be allowed to vote, though. Yeah, I think felons should be allowed to vote, too. I'm just saying, you don't actually have a right to vote enumerated in the Constitution. You do have a Second Amendment right. Kremoltzwitzky says, shall not be infringed means exactly that. Doesn't matter what crime you may have committed, shall not be infringed. And this is coming from an Australian. Yeah, the only minor, and it's very minor, extremely minor, disagreement I have with that is we have traditionally infringed upon rights or really considered a forfeiture of right during the term of punishment by government after due process. Your rights are able to be deprived by government following due process and a trial by jury. That is how the forfeiture of rights works. You commit a criminal act, and then you forfeit certain rights for a period of time that is sufficient and consummate to the offense. Those are established by Congress, so their nuts are on the line if they overstep that. But that's how it's supposed to work. It's traditionally understood. I mean, obviously, you don't have a right to free movement when you're incarcerated. You've given up that right for a little bit. And that's kind of an accepted thing. All right, here we go. The plea still needs to be approved by a federal judge, and a hearing is scheduled for later this month. Republicans in Congress and beyond have alleged that Mr. Biden is benefiting from his famous name to avoid harsher prosecution. Seems like it. During a hearing in the House Judiciary Committee this week with FBI Director Christopher Wray, GOP members sharply criticized the agency, alleging a political bias. Here's what the American people know and believe about the FBI today, sir. Rep. Wellesley Hunt told Mr. Wray, if you are a Trump, you will be prosecuted. If you are a Biden, you will be protected. I obviously disagree with your description of the two standards, the FBI director said in response. In my view, at least under my watch, we have one standard, and that is we're going to pursue the facts wherever they lead, no matter who likes it. And again, I think the FBI has a credibility problem there. Trump seems to be disproportionately pursued by the FBI and other agencies. And I think that impression has actually been around since 2015. Going into 2016, specifically leading up to the election, you have different treatment of Trump and Hillary. You have different treatment of Trump and Obama. You have different treatment of Trump and Biden going forward. The FBI, the DOJ have a serious image problem with Republicans, specifically because it kind of seems like they're targeting Republicans. Dang, I was thirsty. So that's kind of an issue we've got going on there. But, you know, I mean, what is it? It's a little bit cocaine at the White House. It's Trump poking fun at Hunter Biden, and Hunter Biden's lawyers being like, stop it. Don't make fun of him. If you make fun of him, someone will kill him. Like, are they going to kill him before the overdose does? Or the AIDS? I don't know. I'm not sure. I feel like something might get him first. But to be very clear, I'm not endorsing violence. Endorsing violence is not only against YouTube policies, it's just generally wrong. But if I were endorsing violence, here's how I would do it. I would recommend tackrightnose.com and get yourself a mini chainsaw, baby. Wah! That's right. You can get yours right now at tackrightnose.com. Get yourself one of these bad boys. Woo! I finally brought it down to the office. You know what it will cut, Patty? It will cut the foreskin off of your uncircumcised pussy ass. Get Jewish. These are actually a lot of fun. You can use them for very small projects. Obviously, you're not cutting a fucking tree down with it. You're not cutting a tree down with it, but you can cut through. Do I have anything I can chop up here? I have like 8 copies of Steve Gosney's book. But that seems rude. I don't want to do that. That was a joke. I love Steve. Hold on. I'm looking for something to cut. What can I cut with this? I mean, I have this empty can. That seems like a bad plan. No, I think it's promoting a dangerous act on camera. Where do we? I don't know if I have anything nearby to cut. I got plastic bottles. Cut a plastic bottle? This is a bad idea, isn't it? It doesn't cut a plastic bottle very well, but cuts wood better. I feel like I should be wearing gloves. Anyway, the problem with the bottle is it crumbles in my hand. But go get one. They're fun. They can chop stuff. Plastic bottles aren't on the menu. They probably hate this ad. So anyway, again, small projects around the house that don't involve plastic, generally better. I'll bring some wood in. It's a skill issue. That's true. But anyway, tackrightnose.com, mini chainsaws. Very fun. I have plastic to lightly threaten. At least you know Lady Rackets won't be able to cut your wood. Oh, oh my goodness. Matt himself says, do locals call-in show tonight. I actually am. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. What we need to do, how do they do on meat and bone? Say 140 pounds of it. I'll ask Chandler Halderson. I'll ask him to try it out. We'll see. Sales went down with this failed example. Look, it's not my fault. But anyway, so now I got plastic shavings on me. There's a lack of foresight in this ad. oh my goodness. But try cutting your way out of a wet paper bag. No way. No way. That's dangerous. All right. What else do we have to do? Oh shit. So next one. See, the next one is a SCOTUS decision. So I guess we'll go into that. We'll start that. We're gonna have to move to Rumble fairly soon. But I wanted to do the threat and violence transition. Speaking of transitions, you can do it at home with the Tack Right chainsaw. I'm just kidding. That's not good. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. It does do removals. And also, I mean, it can create a new canyon. So it does transitions one way, but it doesn't the other way. Yeah. You know, I think, is that discriminatory? Should we petition the Supreme Court on that one? I think so. Let's see. We're going to do. Okay. We are going to, let me get this next one pulled up here. Oh my gosh. Not the kittens story. God, that's sad. Okay. Is this all right. So, here's the first of these stories involving, this is about the recent Supreme Court decisions over diversity policies at college. And then in the right to discriminate, we'll say, even though that's not actually appropriate at all, but the right to discriminate based on LGBTQ status that happened with the wedding website planner. So these are building off of those decisions. You've got people going in different directions, and this is how Supreme Court decisions work. Now, so what happens is the Supreme Court will review a case or controversy either under its original jurisdiction or its appellate jurisdiction. Now, original jurisdiction is laid out in Article 3 of the Constitution, and the Supreme Court hears those cases directly. Under appellate jurisdiction is established that the Supreme Court can take cases either through the federal appeals court and then moving up to the Supreme Court, or they can take cases that come from states that then implicate a federal question. But the Supreme Court is the end-all appellate court. It's the superior appellate court in the land, and its decision on those matters is final. Now, because we have adopted this idea of stare decisis, I will say unconstitutionally adopted under Marbury versus Matt, the Supreme Court has a literal final say in what the law is, including its actual constitutionality. And when they rule something as constitutional or unconstitutional, it remains that way until it is potentially overturned in the future, although future courts are not quite bound, but kind of bound by stare decisis. The only court that can overturn an existing Supreme Court decision would be the Supreme Court itself. But it's not really that simple, is it? And the reason is because decisions are limited to the cases and controversies before the court, and then any limitations elicited in the opinion itself. So what people often do, though, is they will get an opinion from the Supreme Court and they will read it broadly. They will say, for example, in this case, in which in Colorado, which has a human rights commission and a prohibition on discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender, a woman who is a Christian with a closely held belief that gay marriage is not permissible under the Bible, that closely held belief tends to have to be somewhat demonstrable, either by denomination or whatever. I belong to this denomination. We've got a statement of faith that says this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But a woman with a closely held belief that gay marriage is not permissible under her religion has an exception where she does not want to design a website for a couple in the business of designing specifically wedding websites when that couple is getting gay married. She says that that is a violation of the free exercise of her religion, and it is compelled speech under the First Amendment because she'd be forced to create a website containing speech supporting this thing that goes against her religion. That's the ruling. That's it. And so there's this, you have that ruling. So now you know that if you are in Colorado, which has a human rights commission with a demonstrated history of enforcing its prohibition on discrimination against LGBTQ people in businesses that are public accommodations, that if you specifically design wedding websites, exclusively wedding websites, and are asked to create a website exclusively for the purpose of creating a gay marriage website, that you cannot be compelled to do that. And that's all we know. That's all we know. All right? Now, expanding beyond that, the Supreme Court has indicated that if you are in a creative business that encompasses speech, that you cannot be compelled similarly. So, does that mean that a person who makes cakes cannot be compelled to write happy gay marriage on the cake? Maybe. Maybe. Not yes, but maybe. Does it mean that someone who makes sandwiches can refuse to cater a gay wedding because their sandwiches at the gay wedding will manifest support for gay marriage against their deeply held religious belief? Probably not. But possibly? I don't know. No one knows. But I'm going to say probably not, because it seems to lack the same compelling of speech that is against the closely held religious belief at that point. This is a critical aspect of reading Supreme Court opinions, is that you have to remember what the actual question before the court is and know that the ruling is limited to that question specifically, but may stand for a broader principle. And what we do then is attempt to find cases that either expand or narrow the scope of that opinion as appropriate. And that will be done by the district courts and their interpretation of the Supreme Court opinion. Then that will be refined by the appellate courts and ultimately may be addressed by the Supreme Court in a clarifying opinion that follows. And we'll see this with any major case involving anything controversial. We've seen it with guns, right? DC versus Heller was relatively clear, and yet no one seemed to follow DC versus Heller. They went ahead with McDonald 2 years later and basically reinforced DC versus Heller, and no one really wanted to follow that either. So then they wait 11 years and have Bruin, and states still don't want to follow it. So we'll probably get a clarifying Second Amendment decision coming up, or maybe even several, because Bruin basically created a standard that hasn't existed, which is how do we even review constitutional questions on the Second Amendment? because we don't have a way to do it. Scalia refused to create a standard in Heller. So anything that involves any kind of controversy is going to be followed up by a push in both directions to either expand or narrow the decision. It's no different here with the race-based admissions policies at colleges, and then of course with the LGBTQ wedding decision that we just had as well. Both of those are experiencing pushes and testings of the limits already, and also having stupid opinions expressed about them that go beyond the scope of what the opinion says. With that, though, we're going to transition over to Rumble after we read a couple of these super chats, and then we'll continue on with the case at that point. So here we go. Gigoku says, good evening, Griff Pope. I bring you my Griff tax as I'm celebrating 35 years on this rock on July 12th. I have a glass of Glenlivet Founders Reserve to celebrate. Also, Psalms 118:24. What's that one? Noting that I don't have the Bible memorized. It is, this is the day which the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. I mean, I guess if you want to put it that way, I'll share a little whiskey with you. Share a little whiskey with you. Oh, I got a new bottle of Barrel today that I'm going to open soon. I'll show it to you guys. This is Barrel New Year bourbon to celebrate the new year of 2023. Seems a little late. New year, new traditions. To toast the new year, we've crafted this limited release bourbon by marrying barrels of different ages and mash bills. We hope you'll enjoy it with us. New year. It's July, motherfuckers. Is this for this year or next year? I don't even know. Anyway, it's 56.77% alcohol, so that'll be fun to drink. But not tonight. That's coming up soon. But cheers to you, Gigoku. 35 years, brother. Keep on trucking, keep on living, and enjoying life. This Penelope barrel strength is really good. Mario Carter 13 says condoms were first invented when the sheep prolapsed. Seize the Day says Sound of Freedom. I'm going to take the base take. And I can watch Sound of Freedom. Don't care. Not that I particularly have anything against Operation Underground Railroad. I've talked about them in the past, supported them in the past. They're fine. I just don't have time to watch a lot of movies. That one isn't on my list. What's wrong with me? I watched like, I don't know, 2 movies a month. Just, I don't need to know about what Operation Underground Rescue does. I've known about it for like 2 decades. Wait, a decade? 2 decades? It's been a long fucking time. I'm trying to remember when I first heard about him. I want to say it was on the Glenn Beck show a long fucking time ago. Saying don't care is a little trash, dude. Yeah, I don't care about the movie. Why would I? It's a movie. Again, I already know the story. Talked about it on the show years ago. It's such a weird thing. Like, there's this trend in conservative counterculture, I guess, which I get it. All right. And the idea is that, hey, we're creating a counterculture over here. And the trend is to, like, you have to lockstep like all of the counterculture stuff and you have to consume it. Otherwise, you hate what the message is. It's like, well, no, I mean, I don't think that's true. Because, like, I just don't feel any compelling need to watch anything. And anytime everybody, like, yells at me to watch something, I'm less inclined to do it. So but it's amazing. I have no problem with the message. I have no problem with the movie. I have no problem with the people behind it, but it's not really something I'd watch for entertainment. So go for it. I don't think anybody else should not watch it. It's just not going to be for me because I'd rather watch something else. Yeah. Yeah. But keep creating the counterculture. I also won't watch any of the Daily Wire movies. Not because like I have some problem with them, just because it's not my cup of tea. Why bring it up? Well, because someone super chatted it. And there's a bunch of online chatter about it. And there's a bunch of people doing the whole thing like, it's the pure no true Scotsman fallacy. Oh, you're not going to watch Sound of Freedom? Why? Do you want kids raped? It's like, well, I mean, no, not really. It's kind of weird. That's a stretch, right? So, yeah, it's such a weird thing to me. Like, again, it's the conservative purity test thing that we have a problem with. Creating a parallel economy, cool. Demanding compliance of the parallel economy kind of sounds like the same shit that's being done in the opposite direction. So yeah, not really on my menu. But you guys who want to go see it, go for it. Let's see. Zim the Despot. My thoughts on the contraceptives debate. Perhaps we as a culture shouldn't idolize the idea of casual sex, having it become something that gets you mocked. And at the very least, STDs are harder to get. Oh, they're really hard to get if you're not having sex at all. Like that's the way to avoid STDs. It's perfect. Patrick Gavin, Patrick Gian. No, I don't see your super chat on here. That's a dumb conclusion to come to, mister. A lot of people don't know. Then they should watch the movie. Why do I have to watch it? Doesn't make logical sense. Again, I specifically talked about and endorsed Operation Underground Rescue on this show in the past. I thought they were a cool organization. Oh, not talking to me. Okay. I was so confused. I shouldn't read the chat. We'll get through this. Bobby0081 says, Camelot is cool. Can you please have Dick Masterson and Lofty on again? That was really good. That was so funny. That was so fucking funny. Made me so happy. Monk in Training. The Congress is upset because the Coke was rookie numbers during happy hour. Must play reviews. Could I get a shout out? You and Geeks and Gamers helped to motivate me in weight loss and to start my channel. Guys, go check out Must Play Reviews on YouTube. I don't know if he's also on Rumble. If he's not, he should be. Apparently playing games and losing weight. Do both of those. Good things to do. The Bob that God made mad says, our dear governor would put Thomas Paine in prison if he wrote Common Sense today. Of this, I have no doubt. Our dear government. Yeah, I agree. C says, especially in some states where medical cannabis patients can't own a firearm, but recreational users can because they're not on a state list. Yeah, and I fully disagree with that. Again, even if you keep the prohibition on drug use, I cannot see it for marijuana. I just do not see marijuana as a sufficient intoxicant to prevent gun ownership. Again, standing on the principle that I don't think any intoxicant is sufficient on the basis of having used it or using it on occasion is sufficient to prevent gun ownership. I'm willing to accept the argument that someone who is currently intoxicated, drunk, super high or whatever, should maybe not use a gun. And the government might have an interest in preventing or making a law against that. Especially if it's used as a basis for liability for any harm caused by the use of the gun. That makes sense to me. That makes, in a civil case, specific sense. I'm willing to accept the possibility of a criminal case. I think that can be backed up. But again, someone who uses an illegal drug from time to time who's not currently on an illegal drug at the time of using a firearm does not seem like a proper prohibition. Grifty says, that was the stupidest thing I've ever seen you do. Love it. Take my money. Also, may I suggest a vacay in the Outer Banks for you and the fam? The Outer Banks? What the fuck is the Outer Banks? Oh, thank you, Melanie's Gaping Butthole. How do you get these names on YouTube? How do they get through? Oh, God. Dermy Wormy says, haven't been able to watch live in almost a year. Excited to see you again at Anime Matsuri. Me too, brother. Started a channel after last Anime Matsuri and got monetized 2 months ago. Congrats. That is awesome. Sovereign Bosman, that's a self-correcting problem, man. That's a self-correcting problem. The Outer Banks is in North Carolina. I think I drove through North Carolina once. I don't really go there. Anyway, so with that, we've got Star Twister Zero. Prayer for Houdini, my cat. He has cancer in his leg, and we need help cutting the leg off before it spreads. There's a GoFundMe. I'll share it in the chat here, guys. We had a miscarriage earlier this year. Not another death, please. Damn, that sucks. That sucks. So here's I'm sharing the GoFundMe in all 3 chats. And make sure you guys check that out. If that's something, I never know anything about a GoFundMe that comes in through a super chat. I can't personally endorse them unless I know the person and the actual controversy at issue. I don't hear, but if you read it and feel compelled to give, please give consideration to help someone out. That'd be awesome. But if you can't afford the amputation, you may be able to do it at home with this easy amputation kit. And with that, I believe we're going to go to Rumble. I felt actually bad. I felt actually bad making that joke. I'm sorry. Oh my God. I'm sorry. It was all in good comedy. It was all in good comedy. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I'm not guilty, Judge. I'm not guilty. All right, guys. Whew. Man, I like cats a lot. I really hate it when shit happens to cats. I have buried many cats, not like the one guy who's killing the kittens, but like just through the natural loss of them. It's why I hate owning them. As a dad, I hate owning them. Like as a kid, you love owning them because you don't have to fucking bury them. Like you feel sad when they die. But as a dad, you have to go out and like find a place, dig the hole, and you're like, you have to do like the little funeral where the kids are all crying. I hate that so much. God, it sucks. Okay. All right. We're going to move to Rumble. If you want to come join us on Rumble, the link is in the description on YouTube. Well, for me, it's over there. And then the top of the live chat, it's in a pinned chat there. You can follow that description. Come hang out. If you don't come hang out on Rumble, what are you, gay? I guess. So you probably use condoms too, you bigot. But yeah, come hang out. If you don't hang out, I'll see you tomorrow for a little bit of fun Friday stuff with some topics, and we'll see who's on the guest list. And catch you next time. Seize the Day says, not watching Sound of Freedom, but spread awareness. So many thoughts on this. And it's like such a sensitive subject. It's hard to talk about. Are you guys aware that children are being trafficked? Child trafficking exists. There's a movie about it. It's called The Sound of Freedom. If you are unaware of child trafficking, I strongly recommend you go see Sound of Freedom and become aware of child trafficking. Spread awareness. All right, guys, we'll catch you over on Rumble after this little 20-second thing. And with that, y'all have a nice day. Peace. Peace.
For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
All right. Oh, shit. There we go.